Welcome back, everyone. Episode 43 of the Jiu Jitsu Dummies podcast. We're sponsored by Fight Back CBD. Get 20% off your CBD order at fightbackcbd.com with code JJD. My name is Milton Campus. Hello. Hello. Purple belt out of Fight Sports Coral Springs. You can check me out on Instagram at Uncle Milty BJJ. Me and Bo with you here today. Say hello to the people, Bo.
What's up, people?
Howdy ho. All right, joining us in just a few minutes.
That's what I need is Mr. Hanky right now to think about that. Sorry, I got to go take a dump.
Joining us in a few minutes is black belt competitor Kendall Rusing. So stick around, everybody. Real excited about this one. Huge shout out to Flow and Roll at flow_n_roll on Instagram. Get 20% off your online t-shirt, rash guard, or gi order with code JJD at flowandroll.com. DD214 Fightwear at DD214_Fightwear. Gear for the war on PTSD. All right. Get 15% off your online order at dd214bjj.com. Check out their new Soul Armor Memorial Day gi coming out soon. Very cool. Inside the liner, inside the gi, is composed of the names of fallen soldiers. So it's really, really cool. It's got all the names. It's just, the link is in the bio here. Check it out.
Wow.
They're not on sale just yet. I know it's coming in the next couple weeks, though, okay?
That's pretty cool.
All right, huge shout-out to Warriors Next Adventure. They're actually on the road. I was telling you a little bit today.
Yeah.
It's really bad. First stop, engine blows on the minibus. They get a new... They get a new engine. They were driving, I think, like driving overnight. Fire on, like, the floorboards of the bus. I guess the muffler had a hole. So, like, heat was coming out from the muffler and hitting, like, the plywood, I guess, that they...
So everything's going smoothly then.
Just like it's supposed to go, right? So they're back on the road. Last check, they're back on the road. They've had to maybe, I think, take out 2 gyms that they were going to stop and film at. But they're on the road again, and we wish them the best. If you want to donate and help them out, because they've incurred some expenses that they weren't expecting, you can find everything at warriorsnextadventure.com. Donate if you can. So let's take a step back. Warriors Next Adventure, they're a veteran nonprofit and they're filming a documentary called PTSD versus Jiu Jitsu. They're traveling the country for 50 days. They just started here now in April. It'll go right through June. They're coming to my gym on May 15th. Check out the website and click the PTSD versus Jiu Jitsu tab. You'll see the tour dates and the locations. You can come be a part of the filming. And again, check them out anytime at warriorsnextadventure.com. We also want to thank Retro Grappler. We'll be collaborating with Chris on some new designs going forward for the podcast. I showed you guys last week the microphone dummy design. Hopefully we're going to turn that into a rash guard as well. So you can check him out on Instagram at Retro Grappler Shop and retrograppler.com. He's got some incredible designs for sale, rash guards, fight gear, some Muay Thai stuff. It's really cool. All right. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share wherever you're watching or listening. And if you are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to click the little bell, right? You'll get notifications each time we launch new videos. All right? You got anything, Bo? Ready to rock?
We're ready.
Ready to do this? All right. Let's get Kendall in here. Let's do this.
Woo-hoo.
All right, everybody. Joining us today is 7-time world champion, fight to win competitor, Gracie Barra black belt, Kendall Rusing. Welcome, Kendall.
What's up? So happy to be here.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
We appreciate you doing this. You are our official second guest in our new studio, although you're not in our studio, but you're our second guest. We had Eli Knight on last week. But where are you coming to us from right now?
So I'm in California. I live in Newport Beach. I go kind of all over California. We have a couple of jiu-jitsu schools, but I am based in Newport, so I'm here now.
Okay. Because I know you're always traveling. You're doing lots of competitions all over the place. On an average month, when it's not Corona, you're probably traveling, 2 or 3 times a month?
Yeah, typically 2 to 3. I like to stick to 2 to 3 because it gives me a weekend to be home and just kind of recollect myself. So I like to be home at least 1 weekend out of the month, but usually 2 to 3, sometimes 1 to 2. Yeah,
okay.
Traveling a lot.
So now, Corona. How are you guys doing there? You know, California was probably one of the most hard hit states. And, you know, look, we're in Florida, and it was just like, Corona, what? Really? You know, other than wearing a mask, I mean, people were kind of really just like, yeah, whatever, let's do what we want. And that includes, you know, jiu-jitsu academies. What was it like for you guys out there? Or what is it like still right now?
Man, it's been tough. I know that everyone has a different, like, unique perspective, especially with competitors and stuff. But with me, my family has 3 schools. So we opened 2, and then I just opened a 3rd one last summer, right? Actually, in the middle of coronavirus in July.
Wow.
So it's been an interesting combination of balancing my life as an athlete with COVID and not having as much opportunity to train, or not as much opportunity, because you can create opportunity however you need to, but different circumstances, we'll say. And then, of course, you know, different circumstances with competing, but also managing small businesses has just been outstandingly interesting, which most people know and can relate to. So yeah, in California, people are really angry at our governor right now. Most people are just kind of getting to the point where they're doing what they want to do, and people are getting vaccinated and people are calming down. So to be honest, I mean, right now, we're in a huge growth period. A lot of people want to train. A lot of people want to do jiu-jitsu. Tournaments are coming back. Everyone's training. So it's great. But you could not pay me to do last, like, March, April, and May of last year. Again, I would not do it. It was horrible. From a business perspective, it was horrible. So,
wow. So you say you have 3 schools. You know, it's funny, like you just said, you know, people want to train. When I was out for a while, had a knee injury, came back after about 9 months, like the day that we were going into quarantine, was out for 9 months, came back to a sea of white belts. I came back to my school, which pretty much didn't really close, you know, officially didn't close, but came back to a sea of white belts, of course. And then they were all like young 20-something monsters, weightlifters, you know, wrestlers. It's like, oh, God, this is what I got to deal with now. So came back to that. I mean, is that your experience? You said, right, like, you know, your business is good. People want to train. People want to do something. People want to exercise. And jiu-jitsu seems to be one of the things that people are flocking to.
Yeah, absolutely. We're having a huge influx of people right now, which is great. People in the fitness industry are kind of calling it like the ongoing January, because every January you have the new fitness challenges and resolutions. Right now we're having like this ongoing January, which is amazing. And it's projected to last through the fall. I really hope so, because of course everyone experienced really tough economical times with students and stuff. But it was really, you know, at the end of the day, it's just like competing. It's not fun. There's times where you have to really hunker down and do shit that you don't want to do. But at the end of the day, if you're a business owner, you have to be able to adapt, because there are going to be circumstances like this. I mean, similar things happened in 2008. Like, a lot of people went out of business, and then a lot of people rebuilt businesses in a new way than they ever had before. So we adapted, we did what we had to do. And we were one of, you know, some of the schools in the area that did it quickly. And for that, we were able to survive and now thriving. You know, we're kind of making up all that we lost last year and continuing to grow and hiring new people and expanding our schedule. And it's kind of been crazy. So good season of growth, a lot of new white belts. Yes, a lot of new students, kids and adults. It's really good to see. It's awesome to have a lot of people come into jiu-jitsu that maybe wouldn't have normally done jiu-jitsu. But after this, they're like, let's try something new. Let's do it. Go for it. Let's get some health and fitness. And it's really special. So I love it.
So I always tell everybody, you know, I help small businesses. My day job in the marketing world, I help small businesses. So yeah, absolutely been the craziest of years, you know, and I was, you know, talking to different jiu-jitsu gyms and helping them, like, you know, get leads and things like that. And then it just like hit a brick wall. And then it was just like, oh, you know, but, you know, Florida and Texas kind of still okay. California, New York, it was just like, we're not doing anything for a while. So now, okay, you have 3 jiu-jitsu gyms now. Family business, correct? I believe, right? Did you grow up in Georgia and then move to California for jiu-jitsu with your family, right?
Almost. My family, because I'm 23, and my family moved in 95. So, or my parents grew up in Georgia on the East Coast. They moved to California to train jiu-jitsu. My dad was a Kyokushin full knockdown karate black belt. He had experienced a seminar with Hickson when Hickson was going around doing those challenge tournaments of like, anybody come and see what they can do. And he was just like obsessed with jiu-jitsu from that day forward. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so he and my mom moved to California to train jiu-jitsu with Hickson. So I was born in California and raised here.
Okay. All right. So again, so now you have 3 gyms. How does that work? Is it like again, are they like full family gyms, or do you own one of them, or one of them yours, or it's just a family affair?
Yeah, so my family opened Corona, Gracie Barra Corona. So we are with Gracie Barra. So we opened the gyms before they were franchised, but now they are franchised, and so we're part of that. Okay. We opened Corona almost 15 years ago, and again, that was kind of before things were like officially franchised, and jiu-jitsu has changed so much in the last 15 years. But we were Gracie Barra then in Corona almost 15 years ago in like June or July. Then they opened Riverside a couple of years later. So that's been, I believe, around 9 years. And then Newport was more of like my singular project. So okay. Newport was opened in July. So it's all, kind of joint ventures. And a lot of our team, our instructors, our professors will train or will teach between the schools. But Newport was more of my project, whereas I help manage Corona and Riverside, but it was more of theirs. They opened it on their own and things like that when I was a kid. So what's
an average day like for you? You wake up. Which gym are you going to? Is it like one day it's here, one day it's there, or is it like you just have a set schedule, you know where you're going?
So I have a set schedule, but I'm very flexible. We're lucky we have great teams of people. One of my biggest, I love jiu-jitsu, and I'm a high level competitor, and that's what I do, but I'm also very, very passionate about business and leadership. So it's important to me that I have a set schedule, and then I have amazing teams that I can help build, and they can handle things when I'm not there. So let's say a non-competition week, just to make things really easy. So always, Monday and Wednesday, I am in Newport Beach, and Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, I'm in Newport, and then Tuesday, Thursday, I'm in Riverside. So a typical week for me would look like, and we can get into training details and stuff too, because I feel strongly about training, but Monday and Friday morning are like my super tough competition trainings in Newport. And then I have my strength and conditioning on Tuesday and Thursday in the afternoon. And I do specific training and drilling Tuesday morning. Wednesday morning, I take off. So that's the morning schedule. And then, or I have meetings, but I don't physically work on Wednesday morning. Then Monday and Wednesday night, I'm in Newport Beach and I'm teaching and I'm training. And then Tuesday, Thursday, I'm in Riverside teaching and training as well. And then Saturday, I'm in Newport. So that's like a bit of an overview. And then if I need to bounce around or if I need to go to Corona, or if I need to change it, then I do. And the teams are great. So they do a great job of handling that when it happens.
So you said your father got started with jiu-jitsu, started with karate. His martial arts career started with karate. Was that ever a thing for you? Did you ever cross-train, or was it always just right into jiu-jitsu?
So I never did Kyokushin, and I always like to clarify, just for my dad's sake, he's so funny when he thinks about karate. It's Kyokushin is like bare knuckle fighting. Oh, wow. It is. Yeah, it's gnarly. They don't do katas. They don't have pads.
Okay.
No gloves. No one really even practices this anymore. Of course, some people do, but it never really got big because it's just so nasty that it's people don't want to do it.
Wow.
Every tournament, people are going to the hospital and they have swollen shins and it's crazy. Oh. So
sounds like fun.
It's super fun, right? So when I was a kid, my dad taught me how to strike, but he was never gonna put me in that as a kid. I was gonna get hurt and my face is gonna get messed up, and also I don't know. So I never did that, but when I was in jiu-jitsu, I was 5 and I was born in 97. So 2002, 2003, I started training. And at the time there weren't really any girls, of course. That was just not, and there weren't really any kids in general.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu was like Fight Club at the time, and it was nasty and gross for most people. So they were like, I'm
not much has changed, Kendall, not in my gym.
So they're like, I'm not putting my kids there. So anyway, I was competing, but there weren't that many competitions for kids yet because jiu-jitsu was kind of getting started and everyone was still coming over from Brazil and things like that. So I started judo. So I did train judo when I was little, mainly because it was more established and it was something I could compete in. And that was really I wanted to go to tournaments every weekend. So my parents were like, oh God, what am I going to do with this kid? I got to put her in something she can do.
Yeah.
And then of course, judo helped so much with jiu-jitsu. So that was really great. And then I was also a gymnast from age 2 to 12. So I did gymnastics for many years.
Oh, wow.
And that allowed me to be really competitive too. Yeah.
What would you tell a parent? I'm going to be 48. I started right before my 41st birthday. So got started in jiu-jitsu late. Always a fan of boxing and, hit the punching bag and, kickboxing, things like that a little bit as I was growing up. Never really, other than a few stints here and there and some like taekwondo and karate when I was little, a few months. What do you tell a parent as I'm getting older and I'm going like, man, I'm getting banged up. I got a rib injury right now. I've been out, knee. Yeah. What do you tell a parent who wants to put their kid in jiu-jitsu? I'm a huge advocate, obviously, for jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I tell everybody, especially when I'm looking for a little Johnny, looking for some karate classes. And I said, listen, do jiu-jitsu. Find a school that's got a good kids program. I'm an advocate. But every time I get hurt, I'm like, oh, man, am I giving some bad advice here to these parents whose kids are going to start really young? As someone who started young, have you dealt with injuries? What do you tell a parent about that? Does that ever come up? I know it's coming up for me now. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So for one thing, also, I trained jiu-jitsu and judo from age like 5 and 7 until I was 12. And I almost never had any injuries as a kid. And when you're that young, you don't get serious injuries.
You bounce back really quick.
Right. So I didn't deal with a whole lot. I mean, banged up and bruises and stuff, whatever. However, when I was 12 and 13 and I went to wrestling, I completely left the jiu-jitsu world. And I wrestled from like 13 to 18. And I wrestled at a very high level. And I was competing with Team USA. And I was winning the nationals and all that stuff. I was traveling all over. Now, I say that to say that wrestling is brutal. And I got hurt a lot in wrestling. And I would even say now that my injuries that I have that I'm dealing with in jiu-jitsu, a lot of the time stem from old stuff that didn't get dealt with in wrestling. Wrestling is really brutal. And also just like, I don't want to bash on the sport because I love wrestling, but a lot of the time, wrestling coaches in high school are just not super informed on overtraining, injury prevention, and stuff like that. It's not necessarily their fault. It's just the way they were trained. So all that being said, my advice to parents is always just let the kids do whatever is fun for them. Because if they're having fun, they're more likely to self-regulate their training. If it's something where you're forcing the person to go every single day, they're more likely, of course, to burn out mentally, but they're also more likely to get hurt because they're being forced to go every day. If they're going because it's fun and they're kind of self-regulating and taking a day off when they need it, or when they're sore or tired, they're allowed to take a step back. Then again, our bodies are very smart. They will tell us when we need to take a break. So if we're having fun and we're allowed to listen to that, we don't have too much to worry about. But if it's something that's being forced and it's over the top and we're not enjoying ourselves and there's a lot of pressure and stress and discipline and not discipline in a bad way, but overly like being disciplined, in that, then you're more likely to get hurt. So that's really my advice kind of in a roundabout way. It's just make it fun. Don't take it too seriously.
So have you ever been sidelined by a major injury yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Okay, go down the list. Let me get my pencil.
I know.
I think we all have like a list. We all have a list at some point.
Catalog. Yeah. And again, most of it stems from wrestling, unfortunately, and not necessarily that wrestling is evil, but just like the environment is very, very different. Mm-hmm. The most major thing that is like the most monumental that I just went through recently was my lower back. I have some bulging discs in my neck that put me in like a weird cone thing when I was wrestling. I got suplexed sideways. I dislocated my elbow in wrestling. I strained my MCL and just a bunch of different things. But the most major thing that recently happened, probably as a result of not being informed and lifting way too heavy for too many years up until the last 3 or 4 years when I switched trainers, and then also wrestling injuries and stuff, is I fractured my L1. I'm pretty sure it's my L1. I need to look back. I'm like feeling it to like try to remember my brain. So I fractured my L1, and then my L4 and 5 S1, L3, 4, 5 S1 had like severe bulging discs. So
wow.
Instead of just like a little bit here and there or like moderate or mild, it was like severe bulging disc and then boom, fracture. And it was a hairline fracture, so nothing too crazy. But that was last October, and it was like a stress thing from over time, stress fracture. So that process has been really, really tough. So I basically was off the mats for the entirety of November, December, January, and then in February I started coming back a little bit, but I had to go in and out based on how I was feeling. And then in March I started competing again. Wow. So I kind of came back to competition quickly. But the main thing that I did, and the fracture's healed, it's calcified and everything, and the bulging disc are just something that I have to learn to try to heal as well as I can, and just do the best I can with that and manage it. But all of that to be said, my number one advice for anybody who's having serious injuries is to keep your recovery time in line with your normal training. So don't mess with your routine too much. So for example, my physical therapy was very strict, very disciplined. I went 3 days a week without fail. I didn't skip, and I put it in place of my training times in the morning. So I still had that sense of accomplishment, of pride that athletes that we get from training, where instead of like being depressed and poor me and this sucks, it was like, okay, I'm going to training. You know, I'm going to my next thing. I'm doing the right move. There were super hard days. You know, I cried. It was depressing, but you just like, you can either like sit into that and feel sorry for yourself, which I've done before, don't get me wrong, or you can view it as a challenge and keep the training alive and all that. And that was a really interesting experience for me, but I'm back now. So it's good.
You mentioned wrestling a few times, and I like a little light bulb went off. I saw you did a wrestling match and Fight to Win. Yes? Did you do? Was that you? Did I see a video?
I've done a bunch of no-gi with Fight to Win, but not wrestling.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I remember seeing somebody. I'm like, did I see you in a singlet doing a wrestling tournament or a wrestling Fight to Win?
Posted some singlet videos lately. They were like throwbacks of me wrestling. That's probably
maybe that's what I'm thinking. But I saw that Fight to Win when they started up in Texas recently, right? Like they did they had a whole bunch of female wrestling matches. I think it was on one of the all female cards, and they did a whole thing of wrestling maybe. And it's just, again, my mind just went somewhere.
I probably posted it around the same time.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. So let's talk about competition. What's what's coming up for you? Or let's go back a little bit further. How do you get into the competition side? Were you like competing right from a kid as soon as you got into jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu makes it really easy because you kind of can just pick and choose when you want to compete. You don't have to qualify for anything. You don't have to apply. You don't have to. Honestly, it's really easy, way more than other sports. So when I was a kid, I mean, there were competitions. My parents asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said yes, and they signed me up, and that was pretty much it, you know. And then we were trying to compete every weekend. So for people who are looking to compete as kids, it's as simple as a Google search, unless your instructor already knows. You know, you can just search kids jiu-jitsu tournaments near me, and they're going to be popping up. Of course, right now is a little bit funky with that, but for the most part, I mean, in California, there's like a tournament every weekend, multiple tournaments every weekend. So, I mean, just started competing as a kid, and then with judo, things got a little bit more serious because they are more established with like USA Judo and nationals and stuff like that, rankings and all that. And then wrestling is really where things took off. So I was always competitive, and I, you know, as a kid, I like was able to compete in the IBJJF Pan Juvenile Blue Belt when I was like 12. That was back before they had all the rules about birth certificates and stuff. Oh. So I was able to compete at a high level, and I loved it, and it was exciting. But when I got to wrestling and I was able to dream about the Olympics, I mean, everything changed. I was like, oh my God, this is legit. Like, this is the best of the best. This is as good as it gets. And so everything that I did revolved around being an Olympic champion, everything, you know, from age of 13 to 18. And part of the reason was because jiu-jitsu didn't have that. So it was kind of, and also to be fair, when I was a teenager, jiu-jitsu was a lot different for women. Like, you didn't really see any women making a living, and most men couldn't either, but especially women making a living off of being a jiu-jitsu athlete. Whereas now in the last 5 or 6 years, that has completely changed. And it continues to change and grow. So yeah, I'd say like the biggest driving force for me was just being the best in the world at what I did. And for a long period of time, I meant trying to be an Olympian. So, okay. So let's talk about the Olympics now. There is, I've read it in maybe just a couple of posts. I can't say I've looked too far into it. They're supposed to be adding jiu-jitsu to the Olympics in, is it 24? Is that actually happening? I didn't read that article, but wasn't that an April Fool's article?
No, it wasn't. They got me. Did they get me? Son of a...
I think somebody might have got you.
Son
I
of
didn't
a-
read it.
That's and maybe that's why at the time maybe that's why I didn't look too much further into it. I'm like, really? Are they really doing this? Oh, got me.
I know.
April Fools. Fool right here.
I could be wrong. I mean, don't take my word for it. I could be totally wrong. Now I want to Google it. But I don't see jiu-jitsu going into the Olympics because there's two camps of people. People who want it in the Olympics and people who don't because they want it to just be a professional sport like the UFC. People like are a fan of the Olympic route and they're a fan of the UFC route. And it's very hard to have both at the same time because getting into the Olympics is a monumental deal. I mean, if you remember a couple Olympic cycles ago, they tried to take wrestling out of the Olympics, which is like wrestling and track and field are the first Olympic sports.
Right, and everybody went nuts.
Yeah. And so what wrestling had to do is they had to come back and revise all of their rules and everything about the matches to make it more exciting for viewers. So in my opinion, if you look at something like AJP, which is the UAE Federation, they made their matches 5 minutes. They made penalties and advantages all are 1 point. They're changing the rules and they call stalling really fast. They're more of a professional, like, okay, we want national teams. We want world championships where you have to qualify by points. We want Olympics. But then if you go to other organizations like Fight to Win, they're more focused on excitement, money, professionalism, put on a show. And it's a totally different approach. Now, all that's good. All of them are great. I enjoy competing with all of these organizations. But when you look at the Olympics, the reason I think it's very unlikely is because we're not united, which is okay. But because we're divided in these two goals, it's going to be very hard to get something into the Olympic Committee, even as a trial sport, because they do it as a trial sport before they do it as an official one. So that's my viewpoint on that.
So the Fight to Wins, do you have a scheduled fight anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm fighting. So next week they're doing Subversive, and that's going to be in Miami. So I'm coming to your city next week, so I'll be there next week. And it's
a Fight to Win tonight. Fight to Win tonight is in Miami as well.
Yeah, it is, and it's at this really cool venue. I forget the name of it. It's like a music venue.
I went to one of my coaches. I have a husband-wife team, Sophia Amarante. She competed that day along with another girl in my gym, Flo, and I went to I forget the name. Is it La Spada? It's not La Spada.
It's something like that. Like Lost something.
Yeah. I went to that one, so I know where it is. And then we're filming a couple. We're filming with you, and we're actually filming with Liz Clay later we'll be filming, pretty much all afternoon. Well, for us, it's going to be into the evening. But that one's here. If I would be going to that if we weren't filming. But so tonight's good, and then I'll be here next week, or I'll be there next week at the same thing. And next week, Liz Clay is also fighting Andressa, which is going to be a really amazing fight. She's, I think, the title fight I think it is a title fight, or it's the main fight next week, along with the Subversive card. So the Subversive card is going to be a 3-on-3 tournament. So we're representing Gracie Barra. It's myself, Saul Vieira, and Lucas Nora. And it's like a plus 180 male, minus 180 male, and then open weight female. And then we do a 3-on-3. It's like an 8-team bracket. So Gracie Barra won in the gi last summer when I was competing on the team. We won the team title. And then there was a no-gi event. And now this is the second no-gi one, so we're going to try to get the no-gi title too. So it's going to be super fun. So you do Fight to Win. I know you're a regular, right? You said Subversive. Any other organizations that you're kind of a regular? Well, you got kind of have you done Who's Number One? Right.
I've not done Who's Number One. There have been a couple that coincided with my injury. So now that I'm back, I'm definitely hoping to be on the card. Been in the works, so definitely hoping for that. And then I'm obviously a huge IBJJF regular. I'm definitely not in the camp of people who hates on one organization or the other, to be honest. I just don't think that it's helpful for anybody. So I compete with every organization. I compete with AJP a lot, which is the Abu Dhabi organization. They put on great events all the time. IBJJF, I'm a huge regular. And then pretty much any super fight organization that does good production and stuff, mainly Fight to Win, and Subversive is a subset of Fight to Win, so they're together. And
you were overseas recently. Were you in Abu Dhabi within the last month or so? What is that like? What is that like going in culture wise? Is it a culture shock, or when you go into Abu Dhabi itself, is it kind of a little bit more lax and more comfortable?
Yeah, Yeah. Well, it's definitely a little bit of a culture shock from America, but at the same time, they're very accustomed to tourists, and I've never had any bad experiences or felt uncomfortable in any way, either in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. But it definitely is different. I mean, if you go visit the temples, like out of respect, you have to cover your hair, your shoulders, and you have to dress in a certain way. PDA is not allowed in anywhere in Abu Dhabi. Like, can't hold hands or anything like that.
Really?
So definitely different culturally. But I just think it's your responsibility when you travel to kind of look into that before you go and just be respectful and do what you can to, again, be respectful to the area you're visiting, because it's not your home. It's a bunch of other people's homes who have a certain custom, just like when people come here, although we don't really have anything specific in America that I can think
just go to McDonald's at some point and you've got the whole American experience.
Yeah, but I've always been treated really well, and AJP does a great job of they treat the athletes really well. They make us feel like celebrities, and jiu-jitsu is so big over there. It's in the elementary schools, it's in the police and the military. So when you go, I mean, people there know all the jiu-jitsu stars, which is really unique. So that's really special too. Yeah,
that's really cool. So you said something before about so your family, your own gyms. Is it a regular competitor, somebody who wants to make a living in jiu-jitsu, can they do that without coaching? Can they do that without owning a gym? Is it there yet? Is it in a place where you can make a consistent living off of traveling and competing?
You can, but you need a few things. I mean, number one, you need to be like top 5 to 10%, if not smaller. You need to be one of the best, because this jiu-jitsu is not quite at the point where we have room for like the top 20 to 30% to be making a living. This is really still top 5 to 10% in my opinion. So that's one thing you need. You need to be the best. 2, you need to be willing and able to negotiate, because a lot of times people just don't really understand how to have business conversations. So if you're not able to do that, you need to get people to help you be able to do that or ask for advice. And 3, I think you really need to give a shit about social media. Like, that's another thing too. A lot of people try to be like, I don't care about my followers, or I don't care about this. And it's like, well, that has a lot to do with how much money you're going to make.
Yeah.
Like, right. Drop the fake humbleness and just step into the fact that as a sponsored athlete, your job is to be a marketing expert. And so if you're not willing to be a marketing expert, you don't just get paid because you're good. You get paid because you bring value to companies who believe in you and your ability to bring value back to them, whether they're good people or not. Of course, we all want to work with great people, but someone can't just pay a bunch of athletes because they like them. It's a business. Yeah. Just like, of course, like with a podcast, you want to bring on people who people want to listen to, right? It's the same thing.
Let me show my sponsor, Flow and Roll, on my purple. Yeah. Can you tell I'm a purple belt today?
I love it.
If you didn't know, I'm a purple belt, just so you know. So, but Bo says it looks blue on the camera, but this is Flow and Roll. So, I actually, it's funny. Like, look, in my market, I sell like social media marketing for a living, this lead generation. So you're talking my language. As a matter of fact, Bo's over here. As soon as you said, you got to know how to do this stuff. And Bo, I just see his head going like, yeah, like we know we've been doing this for so long. But, or really not podcasting. The podcasting just kind of came together. There was my silly idea. I was got together with a group of friends, and we would just always have a couple of beers and, a slice of pizza or some wings after training. And, as a blue and then a purple belt, I'd hear these stories from like the black belts that I was friends with. And I was just like, God, I wish we recorded that. That was like so amazing. I mean, like, God, I just want to take that information and just give it to like the white belts. And that's how this was born. It was never like a marketing thing or, to get sponsored or anything like that. But that's what it turned into. So we were able to take our marketing backgrounds, post-production background, and turn it into this. So, we're nodding our heads over here. Yeah. The other day I posted something and I'm looking at it. And I said, oh, my God, I look like a freaking NASCAR. Like, the image that I posted had, like, all the logos on the bottom and then the stickers on the computer. And then we had a different backdrop. So there's all the little logos there. I'm like, oh, my God, this is too much. So, like, okay, we got to figure out some other ways to do this. But it was like, it was a lot. It was a lot. Luckily, it was a lot. We have a lot of people that have come to the table and done stuff with us. So so it's really fun. But, yeah, if you're not paying attention to social media, I completely get that. I think one of the reasons why people fail at podcasting, I could talk about it from the podcasting side, is because they just think it's going to go viral. And I think that some competitors just think that, oh, I'm going to post my win and it's going to go viral. And then as someone that's been approached to sponsor an athlete, like, hey, do you guys do sponsorships? You know, okay, you send them some T-shirts and see what they do, and then they post like when they open the box and they wore it once, and then you never see it again. You know, so I'm like, you got to, hey, listen, you know, I'll keep on sending if you keep on showing. You know, you got to wear this stuff. You got to put the patch. I'm going to send you patches. You got to put them on the gi. You know, you got to, you know, things like that.
Yeah. Well, this is the kind of thing we're talking about with like having a business sense. So like I said, one, you got to be top 5 to 10%. And this isn't to say to make any money, but this is to say to like make a decent living, right? Yeah. Like you can make some money being something else and having a part-time job or doing whatever you want. But if you want to be making real money being an athlete, then you got to be top 5 to 10%, right? And then second, again, you got to be able to negotiate and have clear communication. And 3, you got to be able to care about social media and marketing. So when the number 2 is really important, because this comes down to, in my experience with business relationships as well, when you're dealing with sponsors, it's like, let's be very clear. I'm not just going to be vague and then hope that you understood what I wanted. I have to be very, very explicit. And I think the same thing from whoever you're working with. Like, this is exactly what I expect. Can you do this? If yes, awesome. If not, no hard feelings, and we can just continue being friends. So those things are really, really important. And then being consistent. That's another thing too. People just really give up. Like if you know how many people I reached out to get a gi sponsor, and to be honest, I don't even like in the very beginning, I didn't even care about the gi or anything. I was just looking to make extra income on my monthly, because as a Gracie Barra instructor and school owner, and I don't even wear them inside the gym, right? I don't need gis. I don't need someone to send me 20 gis. So with all that being said, like I messaged probably like 30 companies and got almost zero response. And then a couple people say no. And then it was like 3, and I'm already, multiple time black belt world champion in no gi. And then I get a message like 3 months later from Venom. And then I started working with Venom. It's like people are just really afraid of hearing no and don't have a whole lot of self-esteem. And so if they get the answer no, they think that is no from everybody, and they just start to give up. So with all that being said, of course, then you can look at other supplements. Like, are you marketing seminars well? Are you making sure that you actually give a shit about how well your seminar does? So are you showing up and giving the best seminar of your life every time so that they tell all their friends and then you get invited back? Yeah. Private lessons, same thing. Are you giving a good experience when you're asked to, do an event or teach a special class? Like, these are things where like so many athletes, I feel strongly about this. Can you tell?
Yeah. It's like, good. No, it's awesome. I love it.
No, it's shocking to me. Honestly, man, it blows my mind how many high-level athletes think that because they're high-level athletes, people are just going to flock to them with a check. And it's like, this isn't about who you are. It's about the value you can bring, whether it's with being entertaining on social media or giving a kick-ass seminar or just being genuine and having a loyal group of people who follow you and really care about what you have to say. There's so many versions of it. We don't all have to be Gordon Ryan. We don't all have to post bikini pictures. If that's you choose to do either one of those things, fine by me. I don't care.
You do not want to see me in a bikini. No, but I'm not posting I have them, but I'm not going to post them.
Oh, no. But it's like, don't lock out this possibility of making this life work for you because you don't like one or two versions of it. That's what blows my mind, So that's like, oh, really irks me.
Look, a lot of professional athletes sometimes, not in all cases, but they can make more from the sponsorships than they do from the actual sport, basketball play. Let's just take, the obvious, like a Michael Jordan, who to this day makes more from his sneakers probably in a year than he did, his whole career training. I heard some numbers the other day, just like ridiculous of what he makes off of the sneakers that get launched. It's just crazy. Right. But yeah, I guess, it's always nice when I'm talking to somebody who reinforces some of the things I know. Kind of gave me a couple of nuggets that I wasn't thinking of, because I probably spend more time sending out like, hey, we'd really like to get together with you. I'd been doing it just because of really time more than anything. I usually say like, I put it out as a post, like, hey, if you're interested, get in touch with us, which, they're not always, hey, oh yeah, let me send this guy some stuff. It's not going to happen like that. So you just kind of reinforce that I need to get back to doing that for the podcast. Because look, at the end of the day, I call this when we're not on air, I tell Bo, this is my retirement program. When I retire from doing my day job, I'd love to, this to me isn't work. This is the most fun work that I've ever done. But we started out with it not making any money for the whole first year. And then it was just like all of a sudden sponsors really did come to the table. First, it was just product. And then it turned into product and money. And now it's just like, okay, well, oh, wow, we could really do this. And then.
It is amazing what happens when you put yourself out there too, because I feel like a lot of times in jiu-jitsu you get this physically, but also on like in classes, but you also get it online, where people are so obsessed with like what I'm worth or the value I bring to the table. I need to be paid X, Y, and Z. I deserve this. I deserve that. And it's like, look, you deserve whatever you're being paid right now because you are putting your value out at whatever you're getting back. I mean, unless like you're in some really shady, horrible deal and that's an extenuating circumstance. Yeah. But for the most part, like if you look at my Instagram, like the people, like I'll bring it back to Gordon Ryan just because everybody knows who I'm talking about. With Gordon Ryan, how much stuff does he post for free that's technical advice that is like, of course, like take the shenanigans out of it, but like technical advice, stuff that you can really utilize in your jiu-jitsu, asking and answering questions, really caring about what people are asking and having to say and giving advice for free, where you could say, oh, well, like I'm worth so much, like my time is very valuable. I shouldn't have to spend time doing that because I'm a champion. Well, then look at his sales on his DVDs. You know what I'm saying? Like people think they have they can't give free information or they can't do work for free or show up on a podcast or whatever it is because it's not worth their time when you don't know the way that's going to return to you. And just getting the experience in practicing being a teacher or practicing being a presenter or practicing being a public personality or whatever you want to call it is a lot of times worth way more than like getting $100 for your time. Right. And then having a weird relationship with whoever it is that you're dealing with. It's like, that's just my opinion. And I've seen every time I put myself out there and do work for free or really answer questions in the DMs or really, spend time with students after a seminar that I'm not paid for or whatever it is, it always comes back and I learn a lot more in the process. So that would be my number one advice to athletes is like, stop worrying so much about what you're worth because you'll be paid what you're worth if you're worth a lot, but you have to show that first. It's just like a job promotion. Like you have to show that you're worth it first and then you get the promotion. They don't hire you to be the boss and then see if you can do it. That's backwards. So anyway,
I have a client. I've talked about this again on multiple podcasts and I wound up finding it's a Napoleon Hill quote. And I have a client who has this on his voicemail. It says, you could succeed best by helping others succeed. And I would just hear that and I would love hearing it. And right after I started hearing that, we have a foundation called the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Foundation. We actually award scholarships to kids. We did 2 children already. We've awarded 2 kid scholarships and we're going to do a veteran or a first responder next. And it's like we're only a year in. Do you know the little boy that got bit in the face? Protecting his sister from it. He was our first awardee. So he was actually doing jiu-jitsu with his family already. Bridger Walker's his name. And he was already doing jiu-jitsu with his family, but we didn't know. So, I saw that in the news and we're like, oh, well, that's, oh, wow. And then as soon as I heard he does jiu-jitsu with his family, I was just like, oh, that's the guy. He's got to be the first one. That's the perfect first one. And then our second one was a girl named Gemma Fiorenza, and she raises money for Tap Cancer Out because her mother's, battling colon cancer. So, but to bring it back to kind of what you said is what the mantra that we've lived by here with the podcast is. We're almost, we work with We Defy. We're an ambassador for the We Defy Foundation. We have our own foundation. We work with DD214 and Warriors Next, who are all helping like with veteran PTSD and suicide. So, hey, look, all of those guys don't pay us. Not all of them pay. Some of them, it's just like, hey, we want to help. So we've just kind of lived by that here. Like, we're going to help. We're going to succeed. We're not doing it just like, oh, I hope I succeed by help. No, it's like, hey, we could do that. Like the We Defy logo was up behind my shoulder there. Hey, let's do this. It's the right thing to do. Most of my my co-hosts that, again, you don't get to meet today, but that were part of our original round, everybody was jiu-jitsu practitioners and all ex-military. And we had one female whose husband was still a Marine at the time. So everybody was involved with the show. It was just like a natural fit for us. And then we just started working with all these veteran organizations. So I agree with you 100%. You can't just wait for somebody to come knocking at your door. You know, sometimes you have to kind of, break down that door and say, I'm here. This is what I offer. This is what I bring to the table. And for the Gordon Ryan example, when you were saying it before you said Gordon Ryan, I'm like, she's talking about Gordon Ryan. Because, I get that. It's kind of like, there's a sense of entitlement, love him or hate him. He has a sense of entitlement. I'm this. At the same time, I get his frustration and that it's hard for him to get a fight. It's hard for him to just get a fight through most organizations. So I guess that frustration comes out in that cockiness, that arrogance, that the world owes me something. But
also, look, there's different versions of it. Like Mikey Musumeci is almost the total opposite, but he does a very similar thing where if you ask him a question in the comments, he will leave a detailed response. Like he really cares about helping the people that are interested in his jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And so who do you think has like second best sales in DVDs? Mikey's up there. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can have different approaches, whether you're turned on or off by certain personalities is fine. Who cares? Because there's room for everybody to win. That's where it's like gets really like people get so competitive and nasty towards other people on social media. And it's like, just stay in your lane because there's room for everybody to win. You can have an approach to it that's different, but you have to have some kind of approach. You can't just expect to be a champion and then everyone's just going to pay you. You have to bring value. And a lot of times just showing up to a tournament and winning is not enough value to warrant being handed money. Yeah. And again, yes, you have to have negotiation skills. Like when I do super fights, it's very important to me that I have negotiation skills, but I gather data. I find out what other people are being paid. I find out how many people are actually purchasing flow and or buying tickets because of me. So I get the information instead of just saying, oh, you know what? I think I'm owed $5,000 or $10,000. Please hand it to me. It's like, okay, what is actually happening here? And then can I track it as it goes up? Because then when you have the confidence, like the whole value conversation is so funny to me because like get what you're paid, get what you're owed or get what your value is. The market will tell you what your value is because it's going to tell you who's buying and who's not. It's black and white. It's not really a question mark. So once you find out what it is, well, now you have not only the negotiation power, but you have the confidence. So when I negotiate with a sponsor and I say, look, I used to have 20,000 followers. Now I have plus 50 and look at my engagement analytics. It's very black and white and I have confidence and I'm not concerned about, oh my God, am I asking for too much? Because I know, but you have to give a shit. And if you don't give a shit, it's not going to, it's a job, just like anything else. It's a job, it's not for free. So that's my gripe with a lot of athletes.
No, this is all great advice. Funny enough, you're the first person that this is episode 43. What did we say? 43, 42?
42.
43, I think.
43.
You're the first person, and we've had probably 40 guests that has talked about this. And, the subject has come up about sponsors and getting things and, and it's usually kind of the answers are like, I'll always give everybody some time to shout out their sponsors. And sometimes they'll be like, no, I don't have any sponsors, but if anybody out there wants to sponsor me, and then, and then it comes back to like, well, I've never seen him online, or I don't see him taking any actions to get sponsors. I mean, those were probably kind of smaller guys in the jiu-jitsu world, but yeah, you have to pay attention to these things. When I was in my teens and in my early 20s. Jobs always just came to me. Somebody just offered me a job. I didn't really have to look for a job. And then I moved from New York to Florida. And then I came down here and the company I was working for went out of business. And then nobody was knocking. And it was just like, well, yeah, something will come up, and nothing came up. And it was just like, oh, I have to go out and get something. And that's what I think. When you were saying what you were saying, that's what I think about. It's like when you're younger, sometimes those things just tend to happen, But when you're an adult and it's like, I need this to live. Yeah, you better knock down some doors, and you better be, in this new world, you better be posting on social media. You better be building your following. You better, again, show value.
And just be innovative as well. I just recently started a program that I haven't seen anyone in jiu-jitsu doing, where I do an online mentorship program. It's a 90-day program for students who want to learn the 4 pillars of jiu-jitsu success for me, which is mindset, number one, jiu-jitsu technique, strength and conditioning, and nutrition. And I teach them those 4 things for jiu-jitsu athletes in 90 days. And they pay me a very large amount to mentor them one-on-one. And this is like something that so many high-level athletes could be doing, that I've committed to as another business that I just started a couple months ago. It's extremely successful for me so far. And it's like most people just don't, like, maybe they just don't think about the opportunity to be innovative, but also they just believe like, well, there's this way that people have done things, and why doesn't just the fight promotion just pay me more? And it's like, for me, think about it. I was just out for almost 6 months. What if fighting was my sole source of income, but I couldn't compete? I did see my income go down, but I didn't have to worry about it because I have a lot of other sources. So now I almost see, honestly, like my fighting income is kind of just like play money to me now, or savings, or paying off things or whatever. Like I don't have to rely on that because I've created other streams of income for myself. But it involved being really creative, really thinking about, okay, what is needed? What are people looking for? What problems can I solve? And then 3, caring about my social media, because that helps everything grow, and being consistent and not whining when I don't get results. I may go like weeks and weeks and weeks with almost no followers, but then boom, all of a sudden I gain 2K. And it's like, okay, well, I was consistent, and and then I had a post that went viral, but I didn't know which one it was going to be, so I can just pick the viral one and only make that. I had to make like fucking 30 of them. And then I finally got one. Like, God,
I guess in your world, you're really just one injury away from that being taken away from you if you're not doing these other things. Again, in my world, and Bo can attest to this, he and I, we've always had like multiple streams of something going. Like I can't imagine it. I'll use my wife as the example. My wife doesn't understand why I always have 2 things going. Like I've always done marketing, and then I've had a t-shirt website, and then it evolved into an MMA site, and then it became the jiu-jitsu store. And now there's the store, there's the podcast. She's a 9 to 5. I work 9 to 5, and I get a check, and then I get to take weekends off. And here she doesn't get she doesn't get that mindset of having multiple streams of income. But for competitors, anybody out there listening that wants to be a competitor, you better be thinking about this stuff. You have to be thinking about, okay, what if this ends tomorrow?
And the old school way of thinking that really frustrates me is that people will try to tell you that you can't do that. That if you want to be the best, you have to only focus on training. And I can understand why that thought is there, but I just think that that's a really closed-minded and, to be quite honest, lazy way of thinking about this, because I know a lot of competitors that are very high level, and my training hours are almost exactly the same, give or take, an hour here, an hour there, maybe more than them, maybe less than them. And I also get adequate rest, and I take care of my body, but I'm very disciplined with my time, and I'm able to get a lot of other stuff in there as well, because I don't sit on my phone for 2 hours or binge out on Netflix for 6 hours. Now, I also am not saying that to bash on anybody who does, because I will go and have a Netflix marathon if I feel like it. But again, I'm really disciplined with the rest of my time, and I like to do a lot of things. I enjoy having my hands in a lot of pots at one time. And I just think that if more of us had a mindset of abundance where, hey, there's a lot of possibility, there's a lot of ways to do this. I can do a lot of things at one time, and it's hard if I enjoy doing it. And I don't have to narrow myself down to one category the way that maybe some of these old school champions have taught us that we have to do. I've had many people tell me, if you want to be the best, you need to stop teaching. If you want to be the best, you need to stop doing this. Wow. And then I've gone, tons of people, very high level, highly respected people. And this is not to like famous people, but this is not to bash on them either, because that is the way they came up through jiu-jitsu. And that was what they were taught. But things have changed. Social media has changed things. And also younger people learning more about business earlier on in their lives has also really changed things. I've been very lucky with growing up with my parents, that I watched them run businesses. Even before jiu-jitsu, they had their own businesses. I watched that from a very young age. And so I had different opportunities and mindsets than other people did. So there's also all that to go into it. But my main message is like, we don't have to be boxed into one thing. If you only want to do that, that's fine. But just know that there's a lot of risk that comes with that. And for me, it's not only the risk, but I just enjoy it. I get bored if I only do one thing, even if it's exciting.
I can't.
Lots of possibilities.
I definitely if I'm with my wife and we're in a Netflix marathon, the phones go upside down. We'll get on each other. Put it down. Don't turn it over. But if I'm by myself, I'm posting. I'm, liking somebody else's share. I do a lot of sharing for our sponsors. Like we guarantee them, like, hey, we're gonna repost you this many times a month, based on whatever package they're working with us on. So I find I won't just sit by myself and do a Netflix marathon. If I'm doing something, I'm multitasking. The computer's on my lap, or I've got my phone. I'm doing something, and sometimes I do. Okay, I've got to turn it off. I just got to put it down. I tell my wife almost every weekend, if you don't want me to pick up that phone, let's get out of the house. We have to go somewhere. Let's do something. Yeah. And I make a point to do that. I think I saw an interview where you said, I don't know, were you living with your boyfriend
Yeah, we live together.
And you both train, right? And he's
both train. Yeah, we both train. We both teach. We're competing on Subversive together next year. Awesome. He's actually my technical coach as well. He watches all my film. We have a lot of different parts of our relationship, which is interesting. He also works with me with my online coaching. Like there's a lot of intersection there. But like you said, like if we're hanging out and we're gonna have, because of course you play a lot of roles. Well, you also have relationship roles that are, in my opinion, the most important things in my life are my relationship with myself and my relationship with the people that I love. Nothing trumps that at the end of the day. So that has to be a huge priority, but there's a way to make that a priority and then also do a lot of other stuff. It just depends on like how big you want your life to be. And if you don't want that many things going on because you're not happy with a lot of spinning plates, you absolutely don't have to. But what really grinds my gears is when people try to say you can only do it this way or only do it that way, because the world is full of infinite possibilities. I mean, how do you think people in Africa or China or Thailand or London are living completely different lives than us in completely different ways and getting similar results? I mean, it's absurd to say you can only do one thing. Anyway, all that to be said, we will have time where we're like, hey, like last night we went to a float, one of those float places where you go in Epsom salt tanks, and we did like a no phone thing for like a couple hours before and after, and it was like amazing, but that doesn't mean my life stopped. Doesn't mean my job stopped, my business has stopped. It wasn't. I think here's where it comes in. It's intentional. It was like I didn't just binge out because I was overwhelmed and stressed and couldn't handle it for another second. So I just needed to be on my phone zoned out. We've all been there, but it's intentional where it's like, hey, I'm going to add this in because this is what I'm feeling that I need right now. And then tomorrow I'm going to go back to working on my thing, and that's fine. So
did you ever date someone outside of jiu-jitsu?
I had a boyfriend in high school for a couple of years who I wrestled with.
Okay.
So that doesn't really count because we wrestled at the same time.
There's a common, that's really the question, is kind of being with somebody that doesn't have that common interest is sometimes difficult when you're this passionate, or it's your life, it's your personal life, it's the business. It consumes so much of your time that sometimes somebody on the outside doesn't always get that.
Yeah, so it can be very tough in what I've seen for other people. I've only had three like dating relationships, 2 high school and then 2 more. Let's put it that way. High school and 2 more. High school is like hard to say is an adult or not, but high school and post high school and then 2 more. So 3 relationships, just put it at that. 3 relationships. And then Saul and I have been together for a little over 3 years now. So we've been together for quite a while. So those relationships have all been with people inside my passion in my life. Mm-hmm. And so that has made things, it can be pros and cons, because certain people that doesn't work very well, where there's like too much and you're with them all the time and you don't have space, or maybe you don't train well together or whatever it is. I've seen a lot of examples of that. That's really kind of sad to me, actually, because it's just too much. However, the opposite is true with me and Saul. The more we are together, the happier we are. So when we're teaching together, training together, and we're at different schools at different times, so we're not together 24/7. But when we are, it's great. And I have a lot of friends who have partners like outside of jiu-jitsu. And I think to be honest, I think the main thing that gets difficult for people is the schedule overall, because doing a hobby is doing a hobby, but because jiu-jitsu is so much in the evening and then people are getting home at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then people are upset because they weren't with the family and things like that. That's a very common thing and a very understandable thing too. You know, if you're having family time and then your partner's not there, it can be frustrating. So I think like the cliche thing that it always comes down to is like everyone says communication, you know, setting expectations, just like the sponsorships, you know, this is what I'm giving. This is what I'm giving, and this is what I'm expecting in return. Are you able to do that? If not, is there a solution we can find? You know, it's the same thing. It's just relationships. That's at least what I've found.
So let me go back to the competitions. Who, not you specifically, but are you a fan of the Flow Grapplings and the Who's Number Ones? I'm 7 years. July will be 7 years that I've been training, and I just found kind of that side and Flow Grappling in like the last 2 years since we were doing the podcast. You know, it was like I went to train, I loved it, hung out with my friends, watched UFC. I didn't really, I was just like, Flow Grappling, $139 a year. Oh man, that's a lot. That's about, you know, that. And finally, when I did the podcast, I was like, broke down and got it because we were working with an organization. And then it just started. I was just like, oh wow, there's this whole other side. Are you a fan as well?
So yeah, I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu in general. And if you're a fan of jiu-jitsu and you're not, like, Flow Grappling monopolizes the jiu-jitsu market. So if you're a fan of jiu-jitsu and you're not involved in Flow, it's really hard to actually be a fan because everything's on Flow. Yeah. So I think a couple things. And a lot of athletes will, you know, mimic or mirror some of these feelings as well, at least the people I'm personally close with. Flow Grappling does a lot of great stuff because when they're bringing income in from viewers, because they do great production in a lot of ways, then whoever they partner up with, whether it's Fight to Win or Who's Number One or any event that they're streaming and they're able to do economical partnerships, then the athletes are able to get paid more as a result. Okay. So it all trickles down to the athletes. And that's where I think, you know, of course, the athletes are the people putting on the show, but if you don't have a good production team, then it's really hard to be interested in it. So the athletes and Flow need to work together. And I think that a lot of times people get upset with Flow because some of the what's the word? The representation, excuse me. The representation seems skewed. I think most of the time it's based on numbers, which makes sense. Again, it's a business, but at the same time, sometimes, you know, especially the women have, you know, some complaints about representation. So at the end of the day, there are things that I would change as far as representation. And I think some of the stuff is really over the top, like TMZ. However, if we are talking about getting athletes paid, you have to be talking about what is going to get views. That's really all there is to it. What are people going to pay to see? And if anything that we've learned over the last 100 years is people pay to see drama, people pay to see intrigue, they pay when they're excited. And so if they're doing that, I mean, like, sex and drama sells. That's it. You know, it's like, that's all there is to it, really. And can we ask for more? And can we put, you know, higher quality documentaries and stuff? Of course, all that stuff is relevant. But as an athlete, if I want to get paid and Flow's bringing in viewers and they're paying me more as a result, I'm happy. However, I do think this is going to create room in the next 5 years or so. We're probably going to see other companies come up and try to rival the monopolization of jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is such a fast-growing sport still. It's like been a fast-growing sport and it hasn't slowed down. If anything, it's picked up. And I think the move to make things more like the UFC with Who's Number One and super fight events and big things like that, where they pump them up for long periods of time before the actual event, are what's going to lead to other companies seeing that and saying, you know what, we could do that too. Because before it was like jiu-jitsu, who gives a shit about that? I'm going to stream the Worlds. Like, no one wants to watch the Worlds. 10-minute matches with double guard pulling. It's boring and stalling and all that. But when you put exciting fights on, then a company with a lot of money can look at it and say, wow, I could recreate that. I just need to get these 10 guys and gals and make an exciting event, and people will pay $60 a pop to see it, and they'll do it. So I think the more it grows, the more companies are going to be. And competition, just like jiu-jitsu, is good for everybody because it forces you to grow. So
that's my overall opinion. UFC Fight Pass, I know, you know, they have like, I think they do the combat jiu-jitsu, they do EBI, they do stuff with Eddie Bravo. I know, was it the Third Coast Grappling kind of got away from Flow? Yeah. I know of another organization. Yeah, what was that?
I think Third Coast streamed on a thing called Fight TV on this last one.
I know another organization that is probably going to fulfill their contract and then go away.
Okay.
Substars, which it went out of business down here, which, we were in Florida. So we had them on one time. We had them on as guests. They went out, but they didn't want to use Flow Grappling because, again, there's a monopoly and you got to kind of do things their way. And I love Flow Grappling. Right. Flow Grappling. I love you guys. But I do see that people are starting to get away from them a little bit, and they're putting on, a little bit more, not only the Fight to Wins, but then I think really, right, Who's Number One, is that their organization, right? That's theirs.
Who's Number One? Yeah. And it started with wrestling. So Who's Number One was actually happening in the wrestling world when I was wrestling, and I had friends on it, and I was a potential candidate for it. And then jiu-jitsu, and then it came to grappling, but it was actually connected with Fight to Win. So it was Fight to Win Flow. And then they developed Who's Number One as far as I'm could be wrong. But then I think Fight to Win was excused from the conversation, and then they just made it a Flow Grappling event, which is interesting, but I think that's how it went. And yeah, I just wanted to add, I think that a lot of people who complain about the price of Flow, or they just, they just talk shit in general, don't really look at the mass quality as well. But the mass quantity, like you said, once you got in there, you're like, oh my God.
Worth every penny. It is worth every penny that I paid. And I even, I'm working from home still because of the pandemic. My company went to an all work from home model, and they're going to stay there now, which is awesome. But I always have something on in the background, and half the time it's just Flow Grappling. Just go ahead, let it go, and it just starts streaming. And I just get that background noise every once in a while. Oh, I just watched all the Daisy Fresh stuff recently. So I'm like, oh, this is my place for content. I love this, and then. It's where I see, I'd really love to talk to that person. And then it's send them an invite, And
honestly, I think what they do at the production value, I don't want to make anyone mad, but I really think it's worth double or triple what they charge for it. I would pay that much for Flow, and as one of the high level athletes that hopes to be on Flow, whereas a lot of athletes really shouldn't have to pay for Flow, which is a whole other ridiculous conversation, but whatever. Anyway, so with it's you want people to pay for it so you can get paid, but you're not willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd leave that out of my contract. I'll pay for it.
Right. So with that, I mean, look, you can. The great thing is that criticism is a beautiful thing. Whether you own a business or you're criticizing another business or you're getting criticized as an athlete or by a coach or whatever it is, criticism, if it's meant constructively, it can be a great thing. So when people whine and complain, I don't think there's really a whole lot of positive to come from that.
Yeah.
But when I sit here and I say, honestly, and I would say this to any of them, hey, I love Flow. I think you guys do so much amazing work that people really take for granted, and people don't all of those breakdowns. There's just so much amazing stuff. However, even though I think it's started to get better with representation, I do still think we have a little bit of an issue with how many women's fights are on cards and things like that. There is still room for improvement. That's something that can be addressed. That's actually something that can be addressed rather than just whining and complaining about pricing or monthly options or whatever it is. So I do think there's gonna be more room for competition because Flow has blazed the way. And that's another thing where people complain about Flow the same way they complain about the IBJJF. IBJJF, they opened up IBJJF Opens in every major city of the country in 1 year. They had that expansion. 1 year.
Yeah.
And they lost so much money doing this, but they saw it as an in the beginning. They saw it as an investment because it was if we do this, people are going to start listening, and next year they're going to start to show up. And that was huge. Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars invested into something like this. So it really paved the way for other organizations to be inspired and say, you know what, I think we could do this. And I actually have this other idea and we can make it like this. So same with Flow. Oh, wait, we could do that, but I want to do it this special way. So I think it's a great thing. More growth, more competition. It's good for everybody.
So you talked a few times about kind of women in the sport. What do you think is lacking in the sport in general for women? I was listening to some stuff recently about for women as it relates to ADCC. There are only really two, right? There's only two weight classes, right? It's over and under, and that's it. How do you change that? What has to come about to attract either? I'm guessing that they need to attract more women in order to open it up for other weight classes. But I mean, you're on the inside. You tell me.
Yeah, this is a really touchy subject for many women because this is one of those areas where this is probably the only area I can think of where we're no longer talking about complaining versus constructive criticism. It's just very black and white.
Yeah.
They made this minus 60 and above 60 kilos, which is what, 132, 136, I think it's 136. I have to check, but something like that. A while back when they felt like there was a lack of women in the weight classes. Well, now, if you look at the Nogi Worlds brackets and just take the women just from there, just from Nogi Worlds, you have more than enough women to fill the divisions in the same numbers that the men have.
Okay.
So there isn't any excuse now. And one thing that's interesting is if you ever listen to Mo or Tom DeBlas, talk about this, they are both on the same page. So like, you know what, we want more women's weight divisions. There needs to be more weight classes for the women, maybe even an absolute with super fights. Like we don't even have any of that. We have 2 divisions and that's it. There's no absolute, there's no super fight, which obviously makes it harder for the athletes to want to compete because of the opportunity to win and to medal and to prepare and to get hurt and things like that. However, it also is completely different financially because there's now not all these opportunities to go and win money as an athlete. So they are on the same page, which is great. And they've publicly said this multiple times. But with an organization like ADCC, I don't know all the details, so I don't want to speak to what I am not sure of. But at least how it seems is I don't think that there is like a board that like has a proposition and then they sit and vote. I believe it's just up to the sheiks of the organization to make the call yes or no. Again, I could be wrong on that, but what Mo has said multiple times is I'm bringing this to the table, but they're resistant to change, and the sheik and they have to say yes or no. And right now they're saying no. That's what we have been told. But the thing that's really like kind of disgraceful about it to me is it's not all about Gabby Garcia. You know, like people try to make it all about her. It's really not all about her. What it is about is the fact that you take me, I'm 185 pounds, and you have me compete against somebody who weighs 140, or maybe that's as low as they can get. They can't get to that under 140 or under 132, 136 weight class. And you're telling them that their only opportunity to win the Olympics of Jiu-Jitsu, the most prestigious competition in the world, is to fight somebody, what is that, 30% heavier than they are, or 45 pounds heavier than they are. And then on the other end, the smaller weight class as well. You have girls that are cutting down from 150 to make this 130-something weight class. And then you're going to bring the girls in that are 100 pounds and you're going to say, hey, your only opportunity to win is against someone 50% your size, bigger than 150% of your size. So that is really scary to me because like I fought Gabby Garcia once and she obviously has a lot of weight on me. I got shoved off the stage and backflipped over tables multiple times. It's a blessing that I wasn't permanently injured. Same with some of the other girls. And I'm on the heavier side, you know, like I'm on like the heavier end of the spectrum too. So that's interesting. But yeah, so that's really the argument here is there needs to be more weight classes. We need an absolute division and we need the super fight, the same as the men, because the numbers in women competitors is no longer the issue. It's an old excuse and it used to be relevant 15 years ago. And at this point, it's no longer a relevant conversation. It's more of like you're making women's jiu-jitsu a circus by putting like those level of people with each other. It's just kind of ridiculous, honestly.
I agree. I hope that I just think it's like anything, just time. It needs a little time, and sometimes even those that are resistant to change, they wind up coming around. But I'm really happy to see, again, as somebody who trains in a gym with a lot of females because of the husband-wife team. You know, we have a lot of girls that have come up in our system at our at Fight Sports Coral Springs, and we've. You know, it's great to see an all-female card. It was, it's
right.
Is that the only? I think that might have been my first fight to win. In Florida that I went to because they were on the card, and I didn't look at it as like, oh well, there's men fighting, and there aren't any men fighting, so I don't really want to go to. It's not. It's just like if you're a fan of jiu-jitsu, you're a fan of jiu-jitsu.
And to be honest, women like when we come into a super fight. And Fionn Davies is someone who's really amazing. She's spoken about this a little bit as well. There's so much pressure to be entertaining because we have this sense of like people don't want to watch just as much as they want to watch the men. So there's so much of pressure to be entertaining, which there should be if you're getting paid to perform. I don't disagree with that. That a lot of times, in my opinion, the women's fights are more exciting than the men's, because the men, they really just care about the ranking and they want to win. The women want to put on a show and they're going to go ham and they're going to make sure that people are entertained. Like when I fought Nacheli De Jesus in March, and it was my first match back after being out for 6 months, going in with one of the most winningest women in the world, who I respect a lot and I've had close matches with in the past. I went in and played a completely different game plan than I've ever played before, and it worked out for me for a couple minutes until it didn't. But it's okay, because I've had a fight with her before that was like, it was decided by an advantage point. I got stuck in spider lasso for 6 minutes. It was boring. No one would have wanted to watch it. And I knew I didn't want that as the headliner of the show. So I went in and went for leg locks, which I never do. Yeah. And I pulled guard, but it was exciting and people loved it. And so I lost. And so it's okay, you know? But anyway, I think that really speaks a lot to the way that women are fighting for the representation on the cards, and we're fighting to be paid equally. And I've really had to fight hard for that as well. And I just think that, like, we have been patient enough as far as taking time and waiting and all that. I mean, it's been a long time. And so we show up with 100%. And I think we deserve to be paid that in return. But, and again, this comes down to, like, what value are you bringing to the show? Because I understand statistics, I understand sports and money and all that very well. So then next question is, you go and look at the social medias, and more of the women have larger social media followings than a lot of the men. Yeah. And so who's really getting the viewers in? Who's really getting the eyeballs in? Like, that really becomes an important question for people to pay attention to.
There's a parallel. I was always a huge UFC fan since early 2000s, before I got into jiu-jitsu. There's a parallel here with, you know, I kind of see, hopefully the same thing will happen, where the women's fights in the UFC are almost always more exciting than the men's fights. Almost always. Is it because they have something to prove? I don't know. Is it something to prove? Is it like, I've got to come at it harder because this is my shot, this is my opportunity?
Flexibility and stuff, we're different. We have different bodies.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a, you know, I'm gonna watch the fights tonight, and Rose Namajunas is the fight is like, that's the only, when I'm thinking of the fights tonight, I couldn't tell you everyone else's. Like, I know Kamaru Usman is fighting, and, you know, I want to see the Thug Roast. That's the most interesting fight to me, because I think she's got a shot, but she's one of my favorite fighters. It has nothing to do with male, female. She's just one of the most exciting fighters, you know? So,
well, you know, one thing that's really interesting that I this is a great way to kind of come first to full circle of what we talked about earlier. Think about Dana White. Okay. Dana White was so resistant to Ronda, and I love Ronda, and I actually grew up doing judo with her sister, and I trained with her and her mom and know them really well. Yeah. And they're great. So, anyway, so the thing about Ronda and Dana White, Ronda had to beg and beg and beg and beg and beg for an opportunity. It had to start from the top. Dana had to say, okay, fuck it. We're going to do it. We're going to try it. Once he did that, how much money did Ronda put into his pocket? How much value did she bring to the UFC because he said, okay, let's do it? So then when you think about, like, ADCC, and you're like, are you guys really not going to add more? For what? For what? For a couple grand that you don't even care about? Yeah. For what reason? You know, like, what's actually the reason? Just because you don't feel like it? Or you think about flow, and it's like, and they're starting to do more and more, but it has to start and that's why I really respect Seth Daniels. It has to, when he was doing the all women's cards and stuff. And not only that, but now they're going back to women and men's combined cards, which I actually do prefer. I think it's better for viewers and optics and stuff. However, when he looks at the lineup of a card, he doesn't put the male in front of the female on the the title fight. That's what I was looking for the title fight, just because of who they are, how many followers they have. He looks at titles, like, what have you won the worlds? Have you done this? Have you done that? So I have had fights that were like the last fights of the night over, like, really popular guys, because I'm a more accomplished athlete. And when you, so coming for full circle, when you take the chance to do that because you're supporting something, or you think it's the right thing to do, or you want to see what's going to happen, the value will come back to you. Yeah. But if you just wait for the viewers to do it themselves, or the athletes to do it themselves, and you're resistant, you're going to be behind. you're going to be behind. And so I just think that Dana White example is like a great point and a great example to see. Stop being patient, make it happen. Like you have the power. When you're at the top and you have the power, you get to choose the change. And that's a big responsibility. So you got to choose in the way that society is moving forward. And we're seeing that that's happening. I think that's important.
Awesome. Listen, I want to, because I know that we want to, not a little bit of a time crunch for you. I've got some listener questions, so we're going to go through these, and then we'll go through our little speed round, and then we'll let you run. Okay, so my first question is from Crush01. I'm new to jiu-jitsu, only been training for about 6 months, and interested in doing competitions. The place I train at now does not have a competition team or competition classes. Would you consider changing gyms?
So being new to jiu-jitsu, my fast answer is no, because you don't really know enough about jiu-jitsu to make a good decision or an informed decision. And that's not a bash on you and your ability. It's just facts. You know, if I go into a new field for 6 months, I don't really know enough to make an educated decision yet. And I would also say that most people who compete don't have competition teams and don't have competition classes. And it's very, very much possible to be a successful competitor, especially in the beginning stages at white and blue belt, and even purple belt and brown belt, to be honest.
Agreed.
Without competition classes. Just train hard, just go and train hard and do your best to ask questions from the people who are leading your classes, because that's why they're there. They're teaching stuff for an entire class, but it may not be the best thing for you to focus on for that day. So ask questions. Hey, how is this looking? What should I be working on? How do I set up a game plan for a tournament? Or what would that look like? Or, you know, what's the possibility of, can me and my buddy who both want to compete stay for 30 minutes after class and do a little bit of specific training or whatever you would advise? Ask questions. Don't just leave because we don't have enough information yet. So that
right. You might go out to that competition and hate it. You may not like those nerves or cutting weight.
And your instructor, and also you haven't given your instructor a chance yet, because they may be uber supportive. They may be really excited to help you. This may be a spark to have a competition class. I mean, who knows? There's a whole realm of possibilities, but until we ask questions and we get more information and we have trial and error, don't just give up on your team. Like, I'm not, not like in like, oh, you must stay with them forever loyalty way, but loyalty is important. And so if they've given you 6 months of good training, don't just step away because you don't have the information yet. So I would say, ask more questions, get more involved, put yourself in the middle instead of staying on the outside.
Awesome. And by the way, just for the listeners, you guys know if you've submitted a question, you know that you get a shot at a bottle of Fight Back CBD, or we send you a podcast t-shirt. So just a reminder to anybody who wants to send questions. You don't have to wait for us to post to send questions. So you can send questions whenever you want. We'll work it into a future show. If it doesn't make sense on one, it might make sense on another. These were absolutely very specifically for you, though. Okay. So the next question is Sauce BJJ. What is one piece of advice that you wish your 12-year-old self knew? You know, what would you tell yourself, the 12-year-old you, what would you tell yourself? That is such a great question. 12 was a weird age for me. and I know who Sauce BJJ is. She's won a couple of prizes with us, and she's a listener. So I believe she's probably right around. She's 12. That's why I believe she's at 12 years old. She trains, I think, at M&J in oh God, they're gonna kill me. I think it's Kissimmee, Florida.
Awesome. So yeah, 12 years old. My number one piece of advice is just to keep it fun. Because when I was 12 and 13, I had my whole life mapped out in front of me, and I had everything planned down to the year. And some of those things happened, but some of them completely changed and disappeared, because when I got older, not necessarily that I didn't want them anymore, but I realized I wanted other things more that maybe I didn't see as a possibility when I was 12. And so I don't want to sit here and say, oh, you're going to change your mind, because people always would tell me that. And you may not change your mind. That's also true. But you just don't know, because as you grow, you have more vision. Like your vision is here and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have more ideas for what you want to do. So my number one advice is to have fun and follow what feels fun for you. Don't make anything too hard or over the top. Do the parts that you enjoy. If you have different interests, if you decide you want to paint, if you decide you want to be really great at math, whatever it is, do all of those things, because jiu-jitsu is not going anywhere. But train hard and have fun at the same time. And it sounds really simple, but when you really sit and think about what's fun for me, what do I enjoy? What do I do because I like it, not because someone else thinks that I should, or I think it's going to make me cool, or I think it's going to make me feel important because I get a medal or whatever it is. Medals never really make us happy at the end of the day. So you got to love your life. So just have fun and follow that, and you can't go wrong.
Was there ever a time in your jiu-jitsu journey where you just said, Mom, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore? I know that you changed to wrestling, but was there ever a kind of more of a like, I don't want to do this, I'm not doing it anymore? Did you ever have those kind of, because as a kid, I did every sport and quit all of them. So did you ever have that moment with your parents?
I didn't until I switched to wrestling, and I was like, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu, I just want to wrestle. But more interestingly, my sister did. My sister hated jiu-jitsu. She did a little bit as a kid, but she would quit and then come back and then quit, and she just wasn't into it. And now she is 20, and she's like a very high level blue belt, and she started training again about a year ago, and she's like a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete at this point and loves it. That's but awesome. If someone had forced her to do it all those years, she would have been like, fuck that, I don't want to do that, you know? So, but now she's obsessed with jiu-jitsu. Like, she's more obsessed than I am about learning new techniques and asking questions and all that. And it's beautiful because she was allowed the space to decide that for herself. So. That's awesome.
And by the way, that was MJ and Jiu-Jitsu. I got it confused. I said M and J. They'll kill me. Sorry, Sauce. Sauce BJJ. All right. So Dino 1578. My question: advice for an adult wanting to try Jiu-Jitsu for the first time, but no idea where to start. What's your advice? You know, I would say more like specifically, what's your advice on like how do you pick a gym?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you haven't ever trained before. So the number one thing, my cat is getting involved here. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
The number one thing is try intro classes. You know, almost every gym offers a free intro class, or, you know, like $10 intro class or whatever it is. So try intro classes and try out all the schools in your gym, and don't feel pressure to sign up at the first one. And when you go to these gyms, notice how not necessarily like all the stuff they sell you, because they'll sell you great stuff, and I'm not against sales, but they will. And rather than that, notice how you feel and how they make you feel, and the energy of the place. And when you're on the mat on your first day, did they put you with someone high ranking, and like, did that person help walk you through the process, or did they just throw you into sparring and just say, go for it? Because a lot of places do that, and I'm not a fan, and people get hurt and they come to our gyms as a result. Did they put you with someone who knew what they were doing? Did the instructor learn your name? Did they say your name to you? You know, did they help you tie the belt? Did they show you where to go? And again, how did they make you feel? And if you felt like it was a place that you connected to the people and that you want to go back, because jiu-jitsu is hard. So you have to be somewhere where you want to go back. So if you feel comfortable and happy to go back, even if it's a little scary, that's normal though too. So don't be turned off by that. It's a little nerve-wracking and it's tough. Then I would stick with that and go with somewhere that you feel good, and notice kind of all those things based on the instructor, the way people treat you.
Now, for myself, I might be a little bit biased because of the environment that I've come up in within the jiu-jitsu world.
Yeah.
You know, I was at another gym for 2 years. He closed, and then I went to Fight Sports, and absolutely chosen because they were literally walking distance from my house. Happy that I made that decision. But when I have parents asking me about jiu-jitsu or martial arts, I tell them, first of all, try jiu-jitsu, find a school with a good kids program. I said that before. But as a father of 2 daughters, I always tell people, even if they have, boys or girls, doesn't matter, say, I would really suggest finding a gym with a female presence. I feel, again, you know, I have a 27-year-old and I have a 17-year-old. If I was bringing my 5-year-old, 6, single-digit child to a place where I'm going to drop them off and they're going to be in somebody else's hands, I feel very comfortable seeing a female presence. Again, most of the coaches in my gym up to recently were all female. The head coach, was male, but, kind of the blue belt coaches were almost always female. I feel as a parent just a little bit more comfortable for me than just dropping them off with men. Especially if it was girl, I just would never drop off my little girl, whether I was staying or not, and just leaving them with adult men. And even teen boy, I just think that it's comforting. That's a piece of advice that I would give.
Yeah, I agree. I think the female presence can change the energy of the school a lot. And it's great to have both, and that's also great for your kids to have both as role models as far as like how they're going to come up and view, women in power, or women in what's the word? leadership positions and men in leadership positions. And it's great for the energy because they have a little bit of a different maternal instinct as well. And just great. I find that when I'm teaching with men, it's a great mix of energy and taking care of the class and keeping an eye on everything. And same with adults too. So I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. This is from Christian Loves Jiu-Jitsu 21. How, this is very specific, and we talked about wrestling and judo, so this is perfect. How would you blend wrestling and judo takedowns for BJJ? And then they make a statement. I've been incorporating judo foot sweeps to my techniques, but neglecting wrestling takedowns, of which I'm familiar from high school wrestling. So again, how would you blend wrestling and judo takedowns for BJJ?
Yeah, so this is like an instructional, so
it is.
Hours and hours about it, just because there's so many different subsets and topics. But I would say, like, for me, there was a lot of trial and error, because I noticed when bringing my wrestling to jiu-jitsu, I got guillotined a lot, and I got triangle plotted a lot, landing and takedowns and things like that. So I would say, like, also there's two very different answers for gi and no gi as well. In the gi, to blend wrestling, you really have to focus a lot on grip breaking and shooting from an outside distance, and then also grip breaking and using that to control the hand and go into takedowns from there. Judo is a little bit more cut and dry because you have the kimono on the gi in the gi. In no gi, I would say wrestling is just obviously so prevalent, but you have to be very careful of your head placement. So there is no room for leaving your head on the outside of the body. You have to have your head on the inside of the body, on the shoulder, on the chest. You cannot drop your head below the person's hip line, and you cannot bring your head to the outside to finish shots, unless you're finishing like a double where your head is going up and over, but you can't drop your head down at all. So that's a really big thing to focus on for wrestling. And then also I really encourage combining wrestling and judo in the sense where you're using wrestling shots with a lot of upper body ties. So we're using like 2-on-1s, we're using arm drags, we're using underhooks, we're using whizzers, rather than focusing on a lot of like outside low singles or things like that. So you can combine those upper body ties, whether you're doing like a far knee tap or a fireman's carry or an inside trip to a double leg or a back clinch take, or you're using them to work on your throws. You're going to uchimata, you're going to harai, you're going to taitoshi, hip throws, clinches, suplex, things like that. So I really think that is the most helpful thing for me, is keeping my head on the inside of the body and staying safe so that I'm not exposing my neck. And then secondarily is combining a lot of these upper body ties and then using those to attack both judo and wrestling. Because when I attack the wrestling and the wrestling fails, a lot of times I can go back to the throw and I'm attacking the throw fails. Well, I still have my upper body clinch and now I can drop down to a high single leg. So there are a lot of ways to combine those. The gi gets more tricky. And I use judo more in the gi than I do use my wrestling, but you just have to focus a lot on grip break and hand control and shooting from the outside.
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you so much. Let's get it. We're going to go right into our speed round. Now, I always say I call this a speed round. You can answer. You can take your time answering if you want. One word answers are fine. I've got a bunch of questions, and I'll just run through them, and we'll see where it goes. All right. So, preference: gi or no gi?
Depends on the day, but no gi.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I talked over you. Go ahead. Gi or no gi?
Huh? No gi now, but I love.
All right. Go-to sub.
I'm sorry?
Go-to sub. Go-to submission. What's your go-to?
Submission. Guillotines, but right now I'm really focused on heel hooks. Be ready for that. They're coming.
Takedown or pull guard?
Always takedown, but I've been doing a lot of leg locks lately, so I've been pulling guard.
Okay. Favorite competitor? Who do you love to watch?
Oh man, I love to watch Hamala Bahal. I'm a classic.
Okay, another Californian, right? He's from out there.
That's right.
Toughest match ever?
The semifinals of Nogi Worlds. at black belt when I fought Julia Boscher, and I won by 2 advantages for like a takedowns and a semi back take in the last literally 10 seconds. I was losing by a penalty, 0-0, 1 penalty, and I won in the last 10 seconds on the very end of the match with 2 advantages, and that put me in the finals.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Other than achieving the rank of black belt, what is your ultimate goal in the world of jiu-jitsu?
I want to be the most winningest American there has ever been, male or female. Might be hard to be Gordon Ryan, but the most American. And of course, Lovato and some of the other greats. But yeah, I want to be the most winningest American female and also the most winningest American overall. And just kind of across the board, gi and no gi. Maybe the gi will help me get there with him. Awesome. So yeah, gi and no gi. Cross jiu-jitsu.
What would you be doing if you were not doing jiu-jitsu? Like with your life, if you had not found jiu-jitsu.
Wow. I'm very passionate about sports psychology, so I do believe that I would be, I kind of work in that with my businesses that I do on the side, but anything to do with like leadership, business, and mindset. Yeah, definitely involved in those. I'm passionate about those.
I
just apply it to sports.
Gotcha. Okay. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in competition or even, training on the mats in your gym? Craziest thing that's ever happened?
Craziest thing. This is going to sound so ridiculous, but I did have an ex-boyfriend put me to sleep like with a choke and then blame it on me because he said I didn't tap fast enough.
Best answer ever. Best answer to that question ever.
And then get like really upset with me because I embarrassed him by by
passing out.
Yeah, really, really dramatic. That's a whole other story for another time, but I'll go with craziest for that.
All right, we have 2 questions left. What is your biggest regret as it relates to jiu-jitsu? Do you have any?
Oh, man. I guess not a regret, but if there was something I could change, which is hard because you have to, you just know more with more perspective, is I think I would have just given myself more credit for what I had done in the colored belts because I kind of convinced myself that it didn't matter because I wasn't a black belt yet. So I just didn't even really celebrate it. So I would have given myself more credit because I did a kick-ass job in the colored belts.
Yes,
and I think I should have allowed myself to enjoy that more, which I didn't.
Okay. Last question. Most important question, Kendall. Most important question you're ever going to answer on today or anywhere ever when it comes to jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Do you or do you not wash your jiu-jitsu belt?
I wash my belt after competition training only.
Enough. Perfect. You're on team. Hashtag wash your belt. Team wash your belt.
You wash it. You're on the team.
You wash it. You're on the team. The other team is we've had mostly team wash your belts lately. The other one is hashtag powers in the belt. All of my podcasting partners, nobody washes their belt, and I
even when it's soaking wet,
they don't wash their belt, and I think it's nasty.
It sounds like ringworm.
Does Miguel wash his belt? Wait, I forgot about Miguel. Miguel's one of our newer roundtable hosts. I think he might wash it every once in a while. Everybody else that I started this podcast with, they don't wash their belts. Nasty, disgusting.
It's still
I just have the comp training when it's gross.
I don't know if it's just about COVID, but more people are answering that they wash it now. So
that may be part of it.
I respect that. Sure. Well, Kendall, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. But the most fun podcasts for me are when I barely get to ask any of my lists of questions that I keep to when it just, those are my favorite. And I have 20 questions here that I didn't ask you. And hopefully we can have you back and we'll go over some of those other questions. But I really appreciate you doing this. Stick around for just 1 second. Everybody, we're going to be right back. We'll do a little housekeeping. Stick around. All right, guys. Thank you for sticking around. Awesome interview.
Oh, indeed.
If I say so myself. I mean, she was awesome.
Very smart.
Kendall's great.
Very smart girl.
It was, we know it's always nice when we speak when we talk to somebody who speaks our language when it comes to the marketing side of things.
Yeah.
We know those things that she's telling us. We talk about those things. We kind of live by those things, so
that's
it's always,
our world.
She's speaking our language,
and it's
not
funny,
only jiu-jitsu, but
it's funny because this is something that you hear in any of these sports, the competition sports. you'll hear about this. Like, what's the first thing you need to know going into the sport? Marketing. What's the second thing you need? The sport.
Yeah, yeah.
The sport is less important than marketing.
Well, I mean, for jiu-jitsu, again, how many times have I said, "Oh, I got hurt. I got a rib. Rib injury, a knee." You're one injury away from only being able to coach and not being on these events that we're talking about, fights to win, the fight to wins, and the who's number ones. The fact that she's got so many different, she called it plates in the air,
plate spinning.
This is
she must have
important.
seen the Chinese plate spinners. That do.
It's why we do the different things that we do. We've always got something going. There's always something. We
figured this out a long time ago. I mean, it's over 10 years ago that we realized that at this point the market has changed so much. The world has changed so much. You can't rely on just one job like the old days. Put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Who would have known we'd be in the middle of a global pandemic? We've still been able to do this.
And that's the right mindset to have in a situation like that. It's resourcefulness.
All right, everybody. Don't forget, you can support the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Foundation. Just look, I'm going to make it short and sweet for you guys. Go to @JujitsuDummies Dummies on Instagram. Hit the link in our bio. You can find out all the different ways you can work with us. You can help with our projects. You can donate. You can check out our sponsors. Everything is there. So, again, @JujitsuDummies Dummies on Instagram. If you donate at least $50 to the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Foundation, where we award scholarships to veterans, first responders, and kids. If you donate $50, we'll send you either an embroidered jiu-jitsu belt from Flow and Roll, or you can get a mug from the shop, from the podcast store. Okay? So, again, check that out. Patreon, thank you guys. Thank you to all of our supporters. Carlson Gracie, Winter Haven in Winter Haven, Florida. You can check them out at carlsongraciewinterhaven.com. And you can check out their Instagram at @CarlsonGracie_Winterhaven. All right. Carlson Gracie, Broward County in North Lauderdale, Florida. You can check them out at carlsongraciebrowardcounty.com and their Instagram at carlsongraciebrowardcounty. All right. Tell Big J that Milton and the Dummy sent you. Special thank you to John Way Martial Arts in Plantation, Florida. JohnWayMartialArts.com. And their Instagram is at John Way Martial Arts. All right. Our other Patreon supporters include Robert Walker, Frank Howes.
You always say this every week.
I was scrolling, right? I should know all this stuff by heart by now. So, Robert Walker, that's Bridger Walker's dad, right? One of our scholarship winners. Frank House, Wolsey Rivera, Boa Athletics. I got my Boa Athletics tee on today.
Yeah.
Right? Pretty awesome. Right?
It's actually purple. Just for the viewers.
And I'm
seeing
it's not blue. I'm a purple belt.
Not blue. It's purple.
Boa Athletics on Instagram. It's at BOA_athletics. Special thank you to Michael Pixley Jr., Jason Smiley, Britt Tavar, James Fisher, CJ Carroll, Mission 22, Chuck Reddoor out in Hawaii, and Roberto Santiago down here in South Florida. We appreciate you guys. If you'd like to support the show, again, go to our Instagram at Jiu Jitsu Dummies, click the link, find the Patreon link, and you can just support us with as little as $5 a month, and you're automatically entered into a giveaway. It's up to a $100 giveaway every single month. You'll either get, you got Fight Back CBD, does stuff once in a while. I just gave away a gi from Tap Cancer Out. We're going to give away another one from Flow and Roll. And look, we also include listeners who submit questions. So that all goes into like a pool, and then we choose using an app, and we choose a winner every single month. So up to $100 worth of gear. All right. Check out the podcast store at jiujitsudummies.shop. 15% off with code JJD. T-shirts, face shields, backpacks, coffee mugs. We got everything there. Also want to do a special thank you to WeDefy. The WeDefy Foundation supports veterans and the jiu-jitsu community. And for those of you who don't know who they are, they're helping provide therapeutic relief to disabled combat veterans through jiu-jitsu. All right, so check them out on Instagram at WeDefy Foundation. And you can donate anytime at WeDefyFoundation.org. All right. Huge shout out. They've been with us from the beginning, right, Bo? For the very first episode. Fight Back CBD. You can get 20% off your CBD order at fightbackcbd.com with code JJD. All right. Last but not least, you can support the foundation, the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Foundation on Amazon Smile. Very simple. All you're doing is going to your Amazon account, go into your settings. You change your settings to Amazon Smile, and it allows you to choose a nonprofit that you want to donate to every time you order. It doesn't add to your purchase price. Amazon donates a portion of what you spend to the foundation of your choice. Okay? So check that out. Again, Amazon Smile. My Instagram is Uncle Milty. I forgot my own Instagram.
Yeah.
At Uncle Milty BJJ on IG. This is what I get for trying to do it a little bit different every time. I do it to myself. At Uncle Milty BJJ on IG. What do you got, Bo? You about to say something?
No.
You good?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching and listening. Stay safe, everyone. Us.
Woo. Now we should
I'm not going to sing it this time.
Dance. Yeah.
Just dance because the music's playing already.
All right.
And we're out.